Hey, what's going on? It's Doug Cunnington here, and this is The Doug Show. In this episode, I talked to Kurt Phillip of Convertica, and that's over at convertica.org, and there's a link in the description. In this episode, we talk about conversion rate optimization, which is all about improving the conversion rate. So at the end of the day, you're making more money from roughly the same amount of traffic. And that is the assumption that, revenue is based on the conversion rate, but the conversion rate can be anything, right? The conversion could actually be the number of people that maybe sign up to your email list or call you on the phone or whatever your business might be. But in this case, Convertica generally focuses on conversion rates on websites. So, it probably is around someone clicking on a link and going to purchase something. We get into the nuts and bolts of CRO and how Kurt got his start. So, as normal, it's sort of a meandering conversation, and I'll mention a couple things. There are links in the description for some case studies that I found interesting. Additionally, on Niche Site Project, I have an article about CRO and A/B testing from a student of Kurt, which is kind of cool. So Marty McLeod wrote the article for me because he's a little more well-versed in CRO than myself. And that's something I can't remember if I mentioned it in the interview, but I basically have done a bad job on CRO. Generally, I'm just trying to get things good enough, and I rarely have gone back to go and optimize anything, and definitely not in a methodical way where you can call it CRO, where you actually are tracking and understand what's going on. Thanks again to Kurt, and be sure to check out the case studies. Let's go to the interview now. Hey, what's going on? It's Doug Cunnington here, and I'm with my friend Kurt Phillip from Convertica. How are you today?
Good, man. How about yourself?
Doing really well, and we're using Zoom per your recommendation. So it's the first time I've used Zoom in a long time, and hopefully it's perfect so far. So thanks for the tip.
Seems to be going well, yeah.
So for the people that don't know you, Kurt, can you give a quick intro about what you're doing at Convertica and a little of your background?
Yeah, sure. So I'm founder and CEO of Convertica, and we run a done-for-you conversion rate optimization service. Where we go in, we take over someone's website, we run a bunch of split tests, and we do everything from start to finish, from setting up the test, doing the redesigns, running a test, reporting, everything from end to end on that sort of side. And how I got into it was I am an SEO. I have been since I was a teenager, and built and sold many affiliate sites and had a consultancy, and sort of noticed the demand for CRO about 2 or 3 years ago. So I stepped into this market, sold off all my affiliate sites, and closed down my consulting business, and then here we are today. So we've run a lot of tests on affiliate sites and SEO sites. So I'm sure I can share some of those insights with you guys.
Cool. And it sounds like you've been doing SEO for quite a long time. Do you have any good stories of getting a penalty or anything like that from back in the day?
Yeah, I've been through it all, mate. I've been through penalties. I've come back and gone into PBNs and gone through all the ups and downs. But I really got into it heavily in sort of 2008. I was doing it just for fun, in the mid 2000s, where you didn't really have to do too much. But in late 2000s, I was doing a lot of Web 2.0s, as I'm sure you remember back in the day. A lot of Web 2.0 link wheels and stuff, and we were doing them all manually with my team, and then started to really make some good money there, and we branched off into PBNs shortly after. I remember Alex Becker was pushing them in 2011, 2012, something like that, I think, if I remember correctly. I think it was around that time. And then that was really when I started to get into business, and my first ever company, it was a e-commerce store. We used Web 2.0s and PBNs and went to number one within 2 or 3 weeks, and the business really took off, and that sort of supercharged the growth in that, and then took on a few other big brands actually around that time with PBNs, and got them to number one, and it was just good timing, I guess, when PBNs weren't sort of smashed to bits and everyone was doing them. I'm sure you remember 2012, 2013. That was just the golden age for ranking very quickly. You could throw 50, 100 PBNs at a site in one day and it would be ranking within a week, so.
It was ridiculous. Yeah. When I got into it a little bit later, so 2013, so kind of the tail end. So just so I could invest a lot of money and time into the PBNs, and then I lost everything.
Yeah.
So, but it's a rite of passage, you got to do it.
But I don't know whether you saw this, but I remember when, because I had a few pretty big clients in Australia, where that's where I was running my original business, and they were all ranking off Web 2.0s and PBNs, and I had around 150 PBNs, maybe 200 PBNs get de-indexed when they did that massive sweep of de-indexing PBNs, 2015, I'm going to say, something like that. I actually didn't notice any sites get penalized from that. Did you notice anything get hit? Because even though I lost all the PBNs, they still ranked just as fine. I replaced the links, and it didn't seem to have a negative impact.
Correct. Yeah, I had one instance where things were penalized, manual penalties. But I know what you're talking about. Like big de-index. What word is that? De-indexation. Yeah. So and then no penalties, but all the links that I had were bad, so the rankings dropped. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, we will definitely get into the bolts, the nuts and bolts of CRO. But before we do, I noticed you mentioned you sounded like you built a team even early on. So did you have any professional experience or background in building a team, or working with a lot of people, or being a manager? Just curious, what drew you to the agency?
No, I didn't at all. I think it was just my personality type and reading a lot of books, I guess. I don't know, because I'm a butcher by trade out of high school. So I went into a laboring job, and I have no idea sort of how I picked up that skill set. But then I just worked out that I was good at growing and managing people. I'm not the best. I'm pretty sloppy when it comes to making everything perfect. I have an end goal and I like to get to it very quickly. So I like to hire people that are very diligent and have a keen eye for detail and stuff, because I knew I wasn't good at that. So then I hired people who were, but no specific training, just reading. I think the paradigm shift was, the 4-hour work week. And then from there going into the E-Myth, and then a bunch of other books that sort of gave me a good framework in my own head. But
okay, interesting. I'm going to come back to that because I find that very interesting. So let's get into the CRO stuff. So
yeah, sure.
At a high level, can you just give us the couple bullet points of what the process is, and I guess what the goal is? So CRO, very beginning.
Yeah. So the goal of CRO is to maximize the value of your visitors, right? So you have a certain amount of, whether it's from SEO, whether it's from PPC, you have let's just say you have a 6-month earnings of $5,000 a month on your website. You've sort of maxed out all your keywords. You're at number one for all your buyer intent keywords, and you sort of don't know where to go. That's where we step in, and we require sort of on a minimum side, sort of 2,000 to 3,000 visitors per month per page we test. Now, the process is we go in, we identify the top 10 pages for earnings. Generally, the top 5 to 10 pages will create nearly all the earnings on a site. I'm sure you've seen this over and over again. So then we go through and identify those, and then we run split tests on those. So not only do they create most of the revenue, but they have most of the traffic. And with split testing, traffic is the number one golden. What's the word I'm trying to look for here? Is the main thing we look for when we're taking on a site. So once we've identified those top 10 pages, we'll then go and set up the test for, say, 5 to begin with. And then at the start, it was a bunch of hit and miss. We would just run a bunch of different layouts until we knew what would win. But now that we've run around 4,000 split tests, we have a long list that we know have worked on previous niches. So then we'll go through and test those on each of the sites. Generally, a test will run for 3 to 4 weeks. And then we'll pull the Amazon data, because we set up separate sub-affiliate tracking IDs for each split test variant. So we set up 2 split testing variants. And then we see which creates the most revenue, and then rinse and repeat that process 3 or 4 times over the campaign, depending on how long it is.
Gotcha. And in the beginning, right?
Mhm.
How did you figure out like what you wanted to test?
So I had a business partnership with Matt Diggity, and we were taking on a large portfolio of websites where they would come in, we would SEO and CRO the website, and we'd split the profit that we'd make on top of what they were already making. But the issue was we had a very strict protocol when we were looking at the backlink profile of sites. We couldn't take on anything, for one, if they didn't have every single link listed. If they were just using different providers and they didn't know, we'd instantly dismiss that site. And I saw a ton of opportunity that we're leaving on the table. And then, from the 20, 30, 40 sites, I can't remember how many it was, I just noticed the quick wins that we're getting on those sites. So then I went off and started, it was originally called CRO Guy on the side. And then just built up a long list of good performing layouts and things like that, and went from there.
Gotcha. So at this point, you have, I don't know, probably a handful, and you're like, this works like 90% of the time. So you could run the test, and you have the data at that point, and then you can roll out whatever like the winning test is, right?
Yeah. So like initially at the start, we only would put a client on a 1 month campaign, because we just would go in, we'd only take sites that we knew we could get a quick win on, and then we would just do what we knew would work, and then that was it. So it was easy. We would only take on sites that we knew we could get a win on. So then it was pretty simple. But now most of our clients stay with us between 3 and 6 months. So we have to keep delivering value in that time. And how we do that is just from having so much data on what's worked. So, if that layout works, then this one should have a good chance of winning. We have a whole spreadsheet matrix of how to know what to test next. And that's how the process sort of works now. Yeah.
Gotcha. And what's your team look like right now?
Mm-hmm. We've done a pretty corporate structure. I've got a middle management, and then under them they have their own departments under them. So we have director of operations, we have head of customer support, and then the marketing department we're sort of juggling around at the moment, but it's pretty automated in the sense of Facebook ads, Reddit, content marketing. It's all pretty systemized now. We don't really need a heavy person team. We're using a lot of technology to distribute it, but yeah, most of the team, around 15 or 16, are purely in the operations side, setting up the test, doing the coding, running the reports, doing QA, quality assurance before the test goes out, make sure there's no mistakes, making sure we're following all the SEO protocols and things like that. And then, we've got around 25 people. We've got around 4 or 5 contractors that we use quite often. And then we've got around 20 full-time staff.
Okay, cool. And where's the staff located? Is it a remote team?
Yeah, we've got a fully remote team, and most of them are and most of the operations team are in the Philippines. So my head of operations is based in Manila. So he hired everyone in person and within his network. So we've grown out a pretty conventional team there. But then most of the other team members are distributed all around the place. Europe, Thailand. I spend a lot of time in Thailand, so there's a few team members out there, and then India, all over the place. Okay,
cool. And like, are you like, hey, I want to keep growing, or where do you see it going?
Yeah, it sort of has grown pretty organically. As you get good results, you get bigger clients and so on. And some of the clients we've got at the moment are, 7 and 8 figure clients now. We're starting to move into a whole different market, which requires a different communication style. And if you notice our blog posts, how they've changed, if you have the chance to go and have a look, at the start, they were all affiliate related blog posts and how to get quick wins on affiliate sites and so on. And now it's more high level thinking about psychology and different techniques like that, which attracts the larger clients, and it's working really well. So we're growing pretty organically. The team we've set up in a way that we can scale pretty well too. We do like a bottom to top approach where we never hire someone in a managerial position. We'll always hire someone in at the bottom and then train them up so they understand the whole system, especially in the operations department. And then as they prove themselves over time and get more experience, then they get promoted up to more senior positions.
Okay, cool. And jumping back into sort of like the nuts and bolts here. So what tool do you use for the A/B testing?
So we use the infrastructure from a tool called VWO, which is it's one of the big three. There's Optimizely, there's VWO, and there's Google Optimize. There's sort of the big three that are out. There's a bunch of others now too, actually, but those are the more robust ones. And then we have built our own custom reporting dashboard, and they have an API. So we've created a heap of software off the back of it that incorporates with Slack and Zapier, and we have all these automations hanging off it too. But it all comes down to the data processing from VWO. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess why do you go with VWO versus like the Google Optimize? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, the Google solution. We just found it more tailored to what we needed. They were very accommodating in helping us scale, customizing different things that we needed and didn't need. I find because they're a company that's fully invested in improving their product, like Optimizely is too, they have more innovations in the company. I find Google Optimize has lagged a bit because it's one of Google's billion projects that they have going on. They don't have a full focus on it. So yeah, they were just great, and they have a great API. So it allowed us to systemize and automate. I think we'd have double the staff if it wasn't for the amount of automations we have hanging off it. Yeah.
Got it. And it's a fairly expensive tool, and the Optimize is like, it's free, right, from Google.
And that's a pretty big misconception. It's free to a point, right? It's like the issue with Optimizely and VWO is it's a high barrier to entry because they know they want to focus on more enterprise clients, whereas Google Optimize is free until I don't know how many views it is, but it's until a certain level of visitors and so on that you need, and then it gets quite expensive. But yeah, we pay quite a bit for ours. We get like 4 million views allowance per month or something like that. So it allows us to run a lot of tests on scale.
Okay, cool. So for the DIY kind of person, maybe they're not ready yet to invest in the service, or they just want to try it out on their own and like dabble. Like, how would you recommend they approach the process? So you talked about like doing some split testing, making sure you have tracking in place. Like, is there a way to do this without making it so overwhelming?
I've got tons of case studies and blog posts on our blog walking through, affiliates, lead gens, e-commerce, like a bunch of how to get started sort of blog posts. Cool. But in terms of, Google Optimize is a great way to get started. It's a free for the one or two website owner type of website. You need, I think the entry level pricing now for VWO is like $1,000 a month or something, So I think because I don't know, they want to focus on that 80-20, right? So I'm sure most of their headaches come from people who have free accounts. So they just nipped it in the butt, and that's how it goes. But yeah, Google Optimize is a great way. It has all the functionality. You got to make sure that you have Google Analytics set up and it's under the same account that you are setting up the Optimize account in. Otherwise, it can cause some glitches and stuff. But yeah, that's a great way to get started. It has the same functionality essentially. It just doesn't have a robust API. But no one has to worry about that unless you're running it at scale.
Okay, cool. And I'll get links and stuff for the case studies that you mentioned so people can check that out, of course. So I have, and actually a few of my students have some sites where it doesn't really follow the 80-20 as much because of just long tails they're going after using the keyword golden ratio. So in some cases, the highest traffic page is only getting like 2% of the traffic, something like that. So it's big sites, really spread out. Like, do you have, is it a good candidate for doing such testing, or is it like a little bit harder to nail that down?
Yeah, it depends. It all comes down to minimum traffic volumes, right? So like if it has anything, for our service, we don't take anything less than 2,000 visitors per month because most of our pricing is on a monthly recurring subscription. If we're not getting them a result in 2 months with nothing to show for them, no one's going to be happy with that, right? So that's what we do. But if you're running your own tests and you've got 1,000, 1,500 views a month, and that's enough to run it as long as you're patient and you set up a good hypothesis and you stick to it and you don't chop and change the test and you let it run, then that's fine, yeah.
Okay, cool. And I guess the key is like if you're getting that traffic, which a lot of these are pretty high traffic sites, but you could get the data and then roll it out to like a handful of other pages.
Yeah, exactly. And then eyeball it. Yeah. So we always make sure that you track. So it's, you never just roll something out if it's worked on one page or 2 pages. You still at least track it. So once you roll it out on another page, make sure you've set up a separate sub-affiliate tracking ID and compare it to the month before and so on. Of course, different months have different buying cycles and so on, but you still want to track it somewhat, that you're not just rolling it out blindly. Because we met a lot of people who just didn't believe in CRO, and it was because they tested one page, rolled it out site-wide, and they didn't have any increase. So we ran a case study where we did that across 10 pages. So we identified one layout that worked really well on one page, on the highest income page, rolled it out on 10 pages, and it was a 30%, 30%. One went up, one stayed the same, and one went down. So you need to still always test, because you shouldn't just roll it out, because different buyer intent from different keywords and different layouts and so on will have different results. Yeah.
And I guess, the scientific method, it needs to be like repeatable. So just a one-off, like an N of 1 is not super helpful. So, and how many times, you may have mentioned it in there, but how many times do you like double check, or do you, at this point, you have so much data where you're like, okay, it worked here, we're pretty confident?
No, we always test. We always test it. So yeah, we're like we only really work with big sites now. Like as we get more supply and demand, we're only working with bigger and bigger sites because we get better and better results. So we'll always test now, because a lot of these sites are worth $500,000, $1 million, $2 million or more, so we have to make sure that we're not just rolling stuff out willy-nilly, because every 1%, 2% in conversions really does matter to their bottom line. A lot of investment firms we're working with now have 500 sites, 1,000 websites, and they're getting a return for their investors. We have to make sure that each button color has to mean something. That's always a bad example, but we've seen it in the past, where we've changed a button color and then changed the text, and we've increased revenue by 30-40%. Of course, these are not always the case, but it does actually happen. It really does. Every
now and then. That's crazy. Yeah. So another sort of like, I guess, exception case sort of question. So you have a lot of data about stuff that works. Have you had some instances where you were like, this works like 90% of the time, and then the results were different? Just curious if there's like some of these just weird exceptions out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, because when we're running the tests on the top 10 pages, we'll roll out because we roll, I can't remember what the actual term's called, but we look at what is the quickest test we can run with the highest probability of winning. And then we layer them up. So we do the quickest one that has a higher chance of winning, and then the second one will be the more code-heavy one that takes a while to set up, and so on. But we've done that before, where it's looked like all the 10 pages should have had a big increase, and only 6 did. And you're just like, well, you just have to trust the data on that. And then that's the cool thing about it, is now we have so much data where we can just go, okay, where this hasn't worked before, what did work, and then we'll go and change it up. And our job, split testing, is not really to identify the winners, but to limit the losers, so that we don't have a decrease in revenue, because that's, at the end of the day, what we want to minimize. It's not really going to be of any help to the client if we have an increase of 30%, but then a decrease on 30% on some other ones, right? So we have to just identify what doesn't work, and then focus on disregarding those. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's really well put, to just like, you got to limit the losers, and you'll get some winners along the way. I was playing poker with some friends. I don't play poker much. I'm not a gambler or anything, but I did much better. Just because I folded. I didn't play when I didn't have anything. I just folded, and I stayed in the game a lot longer and didn't lose much money.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing with poker, is like not listening to your emotions, right? That's the hardest thing. It's like, it's all numbers when it comes down to it. And it's exactly the same in CRO. It's just all the numbers. So,
gotcha. Cool. And I want to go back to the, growing the team and running a services business. So have there been like any particular challenges in, maybe like building the team and growing it? Sounds like you've done everything like pretty organically. You didn't get ahead of yourself, but any specific challenges running a service, dealing with clients, anything like that?
It was definitely interesting going from affiliate back into client. Definitely, Yeah, there was a lot the first year was really hard. There was a lot of sleepless nights. I put on a lot of weight. It was like working all the time, and definitely required I had to step back in, I felt like, into a different role. Like I had to be employed again almost, like that's what it felt like after being an affiliate for so many years, doing whatever, partying all the time, all this sort of stuff where I didn't really care too much, but then definitely gave me a different level of responsibility. And then the key, I think, for me was just to find a really good partner in the operations side. That's what really helped us to grow. I haven't done any of the training for the operations team, and now I just tell him or ask him. Don't tell him anymore because he's partner, but I ask him, can we have this done now? Can we automate this? And then it's just done. So it's got to the point now where it's a really great partnership. We have a good team members, but of course there's been 3 or 4 team members we've brought in and trained, and then they just haven't had that drive. They weren't 18 players, and we had to let them go, like every team. But in the last sort of the first 6 months of this year was a really big growth. We used Mads Singers, who's a business consultant, and he helped us really put in a good framework for where we wanted to head, and then what we would need to do to get there. And then it's pretty much straight after we had a team retreat with him, we had all the managers out with him, then everything exploded pretty quickly after that. And then we've got another team retreat in about a month and a half with him. In the current stage, we'll sit down and then work out what the next stage is. So we meet up with him probably twice a year to really evaluate, and he helps us. He worked for IBM and Compaq and stuff, so he has that sort of corporate world view for the sort of tech space, which is really cool.
Interesting. And I guess he helped you set up the org chart and the structure so that it's scalable. Exactly. Yeah. And okay. And
the mindset, and so the mindset for the managers on how to think, and how to, he had this great saying where he says, always try to pass off your jobs to the people below you so that you can have more time to work on higher level things. It goes against the way you normally think, because if you're giving the people less senior than you your work, you think you're going to be out of a job. That's your initial thought process. But what we realized is that was fantastic for our company, because then not only does everyone learn all the processes, they're always leveling up, so it that was one thing that really helped us get to sort of like the stage right now.
Yeah. And funny thing, so I did that. I had sort of a corporate background too. Mm-hmm. So I did that at my job, and it helps other people grow, like you said, and actually get promoted. People don't want to do the same stuff forever, so they enjoyed it, and it sort of eliminates your job. Eventually I got laid off because I was getting rid of everything, but it was great for me because I had a lot more free time. And so that's awesome. And I guess everyone on the team has that sort of mindset, and you understand hey, I'm getting some, I guess I'm learning, right?
Yeah, and they also become, it's really important for them to know that they become more valuable the more people they have under them, right? So when we can identify a new role because we've, offloaded so many tasks, then we hire someone else, and then it gets distributed even more. So if we have 1 or 2 people that are ill, or maybe they're having a new child, or maybe, whatever, then they need to take some time off work, the system just runs completely normal, because everyone knows there's always someone to slot up into that position if it's a more senior person, or if there's a less senior person, then someone can always do that job because they taught the person below them how to do the job they were doing in the first place. So it works really well.
Right on. So any other, I guess, thoughts about CRO, especially for affiliate marketers, or any tips, maybe something I didn't ask you that I should have?
I think everyone followed the same, from what we noticed, because we've worked with so many affiliate sites, everyone follows sites like yourself or a bunch of others out there too that are authorities in the space, and everyone follows the same layouts. What we noticed is almost every site or every niche will respond differently to a different layout or the way you present your offers to people, because people just copy everyone else most of the time. No one's getting original articles written up. The guys who are actually getting the products taking photos with them are doing really well because it comes across as way more genuine. But when people are just rehashing everyone else's stuff, and you see it all the time on these brokerage websites and stuff, it's just the same site, just rewritten. It doesn't come across as authentic. So yeah, when I say you need to split test everything, well, that's easier said than done. But you should really, really look to, one thing that we've noticed is you should always look to have the user make a purchasing decision before they go to Amazon, for instance, if it's an Amazon site. What a lot of people do is there'll be a comparison table in TablePress with 10 different products, and all it has is the name, what the rating is, and one other feature. That doesn't really allow the user to be able to compare them side by side. So what the user will do is they'll go over and click into a new tab every single one of the different products. It's really hard to compare that amount of information, and a lot of them will get lost, and it really does compromise conversions. But if you can present or condense the information for each of, say, the 5 products you're comparing in the comparison table, and you can allow them to make it go, yes, I want this one, and then jump over and buy straight on Amazon, then you're expediting the process a ton.
Got it. Very good.
Because then they can compare the different products side by side by just a quick glance, which is what 80% of people want to do. If, a lot of people do want to go down and scroll down and read more about it, which you have your mini review areas down the bottom. But most of the people just want a quick summary because they've already made the decision they want to buy the headphones or the the laptop or whatever. It's just they just don't know which one is the correct one yet.
Gotcha. Very good. Well, where can people find you, Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, our website's convertica.org. And yeah, if you go to our blog /blog, there's a ton of stuff on there. And you can find my links on there, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that sort of stuff.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot. And appreciate your time and all your tips. Thanks.
No worries, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks again to Kurt Phillip over at Convertica, and definitely go check out his stuff there. We're going to keep it a little bit shorter today, at least for what I'm recording right now. However, we're going to be trying something different today. I'm going to play one of the more popular episodes from way back. I think it's episode 22, when I talked to Duke, and he was giving us an update. Duke's been on the show a couple times. He's been on the YouTube channel a couple times as well. And like I said, it was a popular episode. People got a lot of insight, a lot of emails about this one. So essentially, the topic is around, what was it? He had one site with like 500 posts and another site with like 50 or 70. I can't quite remember. So anyway, shoot me an email. Let me know if you like this approach, especially for an episode every now and then. One thing I realize is that because an episode was published like many, many months ago, maybe it's still interesting. Maybe you haven't heard it. And if you have time, if you're in the car or if you're working out, you're like, oh yeah, I liked, hearing from Duke. I'll listen to that episode again. Now I got this idea from the Monday Morning Podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts. It's by Bill Burr, who is a comedian, stand-up comedian, and it has nothing to do with marketing or anything like working online. Really, it's just kind of Bill talking. Some of it's nonsense. A lot of it is about sports, which I don't even like sports, but I like Bill, so I listen to the show anyway. Even when he's talking about, football from like years ago. And he's been doing his show for like, I don't know, over 10 years. He was one of the early podcasts out there. For the Monday Morning Podcast, there are so many episodes out there, and Bill's been doing it for so long that you'll hear episodes from his best of that are like 10 years old. It's kind of insane, especially when he's talking about like sports from like 10 years ago, which is completely not relevant anymore. However, he's still entertaining, so I listen to it anyway. If you don't want to hear the highlight reel, if you don't want to hear the brilliance from Duke, then you can, of course, skip ahead and just wait for the next episode to come out in a few days. So I'm going to send it over to the best of here, and do let me know via either voicemail or you could shoot me an email at feedback@doug.show. Just let me know, like, hey, do you like to hear these archived episodes, or should I just, end an episode, let it be shorter, and go from there? So have a great day, and we'll catch you on the next episode. In this episode, we are catching up with Duke. And Duke was back from one of the first few episodes, and this is an update. So currently he's making about $2,500 per month from his 2 sites. And one of the sites is a little older. One of the sites is a little younger. And the interesting thing is the younger site with fewer posts is actually making more money than the bigger site with something like 500 posts, I think, something like that. So anyway, we dig in pretty deep. Duke is super helpful and super inspiring. And we go into like Pinterest. We talk about content. And actually, I'll back it up just a tad. I won't try to explain everything here. But Duke was experimenting with getting Pinterest traffic as well as really being analytical about it. So he was setting up Google Analytics and some other tools to be able to track whether or not Pinterest traffic was worthwhile or not worthwhile. Interview portion over on YouTube a little while back, like shortly after Duke and I recorded this in the early part of 2019. And there was a ton of interest. So Duke has been super active on my live streams over the past, couple years, basically. And people know him because he's out there being helpful, answering questions and that sort of thing. So that said, Duke has so many comments on that video, and he went back and answered a ton of them. So after the interview, at the end of this episode, I'm going to go through a few of those comments and questions that people asked from the audience, and then Duke's answer. And then I'm sure I won't be able to shut up. I'm sure I'm going to add my 2 cents in too. So without further ado, let's get to the interview. What's up, Duke? How are you doing today?
Well, it's another day in paradise. Even though it's raining, it's still nice. And finally got done with the move that we started back in November. And so we're starting to get on schedule again and get our routine going.
Fantastic.
So it's good.
Well, I really appreciate you hopping back on for an update. So for people that aren't aware, Duke had a success story to share about something like 6 months ago. I'll put a link if you haven't seen it so you can check it out. So this is sort of a checkpoint, and you're a fixture in the live streams that I do. So if you're not there one day, people ask about it and people want to hear the update. So
yeah, it kind of made me feel good that people were asking. It's like, gee,
yeah.
I must have made an impression.
Yeah, you definitely did. I mean, it's one of the most popular interviews we have on the channel. And I guess you're just a likable guy. Back then, you were making about $1,000 a month from Amazon affiliate revenue, and it's been about 6-7 months. So kind of update us. What's been going on?
Well, Christmas season was good, but not as good as I had hoped. Broke over 3,000 during Christmas. The smaller site is doing really well, and the return is really good. The larger site did not do as much as I had hoped. So it's kind of, I wouldn't call it struggling. It's profitable, but it's not nearly the return compared to the smaller site.
Gotcha. And so you have 2 sites. One of them is a little younger than the other, and one of them is a little older. Yeah. Can you tell us just like sort of the breakdown, like the content that you have on each one? And if you, obviously we're not going to mention the sites here, but like if you could give us an idea of like the approach and difference in each one.
The smaller site, which is the older site by 6 months, it is a niche site or a topic site. It is geared towards businesses that use different types of products. Instead of going directly to consumers, I instead went to a business that has a lot of questions and a lot of needs of how to do this and how to do that. And so it is probably 40% informational, 60% money pages.
Okay.
The larger site is directly to consumers, and it's a general niche category, basically a review site. I targeted 22 different product lines, not brands, but types of products, and then did between 15 and 30 posts per each product. It is probably 20% informational and 80% money pages, or targeting money keywords.
Gotcha. Okay. And over there, it sounds like you, if I do my math right, you have a few hundred articles on the larger site?
540, I think.
Okay. Did you write all that?
No. There was a lot of lessons I learned with this larger site that is serving me well now, but was quite the struggle at the time. I didn't write, I might have wrote 10 of them.
Cool. Okay. All right. What I want to do is dig in on that larger site. And when did you start that one?
Last December.
Okay. So last December. So that is like 2017, right? December 20s. Like.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We're in 2019, right? Yeah, 2017.
Yep. I get this question all the time, right? So it's like, I found several different product line keywords. Can I create a general site? And my answer is, well, I wouldn't do that, and I never have. But people do that, and I have seen some that make money and they're successful. But usually the cautionary tale that I give is like, well, that means you're competing against like the Wirecutter or other very large sites. And typically you're spread too thin. There's a lot of content that you have to cover, and you'll never finish, right? It's like a never ending battle to catch up. It's always a compromise. So again, I've never done it, but from my observations, that's what I see. So what do you think? What did you learn?
Well, I had heard the same, you and others say it wouldn't be recommended, but I have a little bit of a contrarian personality in me. Sure. When somebody says you shouldn't, sometimes I do.
Right.
And I also wanted to test my skill to see if I could. Would I recommend it? No, for two main reasons. A, the competition is a lot tougher. And B, to get Google to see you as relevant for the topic that you are trying to rank for is much tougher. I've made it profitable, so it's not like I lost money or it didn't work, but it was 5 to 10 times the work in order to get it profitable.
Yep. That's a good way to put it. And most people, as you know, they would never follow through as far as you did with the, you're a stubborn man, I could tell.
Yes.
So like you published the 500 articles, you invested, probably thousands of dollars into it just on content without the guarantee, right? Like we're all taking a risk, investing our time and energy and money into it. It's great that you got it profitable, but at the same time, like you're saying, it was just more work than it needed to be potentially.
Yeah. Well, my smaller site up until just recently only had about 70 articles on it, yet it made more money than my larger site.
So just to emphasize again, so it's like 70 articles versus 500 and something.
Yes.
And it was more profitable.
That tells you exactly what you need to know.
Right.
I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to do something with the larger site. I don't know if I'm going to sell it. I might sell it. It's profitable, making about $1,000 a month, so I could make a little bit of change off of it. Or if I'm going to break it down into about 3 different niche sites. Now, so I haven't decided yet.
Now, I can't remember the name of the site, but there was a large site like Wirecutter size, and they were acquired, and the new owners broke it up to like 6 new sites. What was the name of it?
About.com, I think.
Okay.
They switched it to, there's about 6 different sites. Now I can't think of the names off the top of my head.
I think it's like Life something.
LifeWire is one of them.
LifeWire, okay.
Yeah.
So the point is, they, like About.com obviously had like a crazy amount of content all over the place. And they were like, hey, like, let's try this. Maybe it was a lot more strategic. I'm summarizing. Mm-hmm. I read the headline, but I didn't read the whole article.
Right.
So basically they split it up, and like profit, traffic, like you could see it. If you just do some investigating, you could see the growth that they had. So that's an interesting idea. And you said it's making about $1,000 a month?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the other site making?
It makes between 1,000 and 15 now.
Okay. So you're about 2,000, 2,500 consistently. Yep. Nice.
Yeah.
And you started the older site at the end of 2017. So within a little, like in about 18 months ish.
18 months.
You hit about $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
Nice. Very, very cool. So with the amount of content that you published on the larger site, from a content standpoint, what did you learn about, hiring writers, working with writers, just running that machine of content?
Well, I started off by trying the Upwork method and hired writers. And honestly, I could not find ones that did a good enough job. Mm-hmm. I kept on they would say they were native English speakers, send me something that looked good. And then when I got the real product, it was not nearly as good, and it wasn't native English speakers. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they were farming it out to somebody else or what. But anyways, so eventually I got frustrated with Upwork, and I went to a content broker, a company, and they have done an excellent job for me. And so for about I pay $20 1,000 mm-hmm. for 1,000 words, and they produce great content.
Okay.
As good or better than I could.
Okay, cool. We won't mention it right here, but we'll discuss after, and then include a link if appropriate. So
right.
Put it that way.
Yeah. Later on, I saw that John Dykstra also uses them. So.
Okay, cool. Friend of the show, good guy, John. So, yeah. Okay. Very good. So you started using the content broker, good deal, high quality. So.
Yep. And I still do all my own formatting and publishing, but that's I don't know if that's me not wanting to delegate or if that's because I really like to do it, but that's where I put in my SEO stuff to make it search engine friendly. So
sure.
I don't ask the writer to be an SEO. In fact, I give them no SEO instructions. I just ask them to write. Then I put in the SEO.
Perfect. Okay, cool. And I think it's good. Like at some point you have to do the QA, the quality assurance at some point. So it's a fine time to do it. Right. And then you could put in the portion, right? The SEO expertise that you don't want to outsource. That's your specialty, right? So
yeah.
Well, onto SEO. When you get the content, actually just take us through the process. What format do you get it in? How do you upload it? What are you doing for the SEO portion?
I get it in a Word docs format, and I just I'll put in the title. A lot of times I've just given them the keyword as the title, so they have the keyword, and then I'll rewrite the title. So I'll put in the title, and I make sure that the keywords in the title and in the URL and the meta title, meta whatever. H1, all that stuff, which WordPress normally does for you automatically. My sites are running, and you've mentioned this theme before, but they're running on the Rehub theme. Mm-hmm. And so, and it uses WordPress Bakery. It used to be called Visual Composer or whatever. So instead of using the new Gutenberg, I just switch it over to Visual Composer, and I'll just paste the article into the content area. Then I'll add an H2 that has the keyword in it. I will make sure that the keyword is in the content once. There will be variations of the keywords in H3s. I'll put in an original image. In fact, I use a Pinterest optimized image, so it's a vertical image instead of horizontal. And I'll put sometimes, it all depends if I'm getting lazy or not, but I'll put the keyword in the alt tag of the image.
Yep.
And usually it's best read widgets image.
Right.
And that's my
little
alt
image
tag.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
And then like what you do, the first mention of the product, I'll link it to Amazon. Then under features, I have a content box that I get from Content Egg that shows features, price, and images. All, you can tab through them and see everything. And then I'll go through and I'll list it once more in a little call to action box at the bottom of the article.
Okay, good. So to summarize some of the technical stuff, so you're using the Rehub theme
Yes.
Okay, which I've talked about a lot, but partially because you and I discussed it before. I heard it from a couple students in Five Figure Niche Site, and then I checked it out, and it's a great theme. It has the visual or the WP Bakery, so you can do some, some custom design if you want to. And then you mentioned Content Egg. So what is that for the people that don't know?
That is also a plugin. There's a free version and a paid version. It works in conjunction with the Rehab theme. They've collaborated together. What that does is it pulls all the Amazon API information for you. You can do it right from the back end. You can put in your product or your ASIN number. It'll pull it right up. You can put in a short code, and it gives you a nice little call to action box or information box of some kind, that type of thing. Okay. The thing I like about it the most, and its back end of the plugin itself, is it has a tab for all the products that you are covering in your website. And it'll tell you which products are out of stock or discontinued, and you can just go there and replace them and keep it all up to date. And it's 1,000 times faster than trying to do that manually.
Beautiful. Yeah, that is an auditing situation if you want to solve that on your own without a tool.
Yeah.
So with the paid version of Content Ag, is that what you get, like the extra checking?
Well, yes. With the paid version, you get the extra checking. You also get eBay, Walmart. You can have, almost every affiliate program out there, it has connection to their APIs. I use eBay because on my reviews, I give a price comparison. So they can either go to Amazon or they can go to eBay, whoever has the cheapest priced.
Nice. So what's the payout typically on the eBay side? How's that work?
eBay is different. They pay you a percentage of their profit instead of a percentage of the total sale. They pay you a percentage of the profit that they make. It has came out to be very comparable to Amazon. I'm usually between 5 and 6% of the sale price on eBay.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. Is there anything else on the content side or on-page SEO that's worth mentioning?
One of the things I'm doing, and especially working on the small site, is there's your dog. I can't remember his name.
Georgie is.
Georgie.
She's sensing something in the front. Someone closed the door.
Anyways, one of the things that WordPress Bakery allows you to do, especially as it's fitted with the Rehab theme, is you can actually do your own related content at the bottom of the post. So you just pull it up, you can do manual, then it'll search for, you can put in put in red widgets, and every article on red widget, it'll pull it up and you can start adding them. So you have control of your related content. You can do it once. It's done. It's not done by a plugin, and it's done relevantly.
Yep.
So that's very important. On my small site, I get 1.8 actions per visitor. Either it's pages, or it's click-throughs to Amazon or eBay, or it is some type of, they have completed a task of some time on my website.
And how do you track that? How do you track actions per user?
Well, I was using Google Analytics up until this month. You can set up an event in Google Analytics, and you can set it up to track all outbound links, or you can set it up to track links to a certain domain, which then you put in Amazon.com. You can set it up to, it already tracks page views, but you can set it up to track downloads, all kinds of things. So you use events, and then I also use an adjusted bounce rate event, which is a timer, and so it'll ping the browser that the person's using every 15 seconds. So you get a much more accurate time on site. And if they've engaged in your content at least 15 seconds, I feel they've engaged with your content and didn't just come there and go, ooh, this is ugly, and bounce back.
A lot of people ask about how to track this stuff. Was it pretty easy for you to set up?
I used Google Tag Manager, which there is a couple good tutorials on YouTube. And also, if you're a reader, setting up Google Tag Manager. The analytics code is harder, so I use Google Tag Manager. Recently, I just switched. Dealt with some negative SEO over the last year. Some people just got jealous or wanted to make it fail or whatever.
Right.
After I did a couple interviews, and I see them come and find me. I mean, I'm too transparent, but that's okay. I dealt with negative SEO, and I was dealing with a negative SEO attack, I believe, where they were sending bounce bots to my site to bounce in and bounce out to give me bad user metrics with Google. And that was being tracked. The only thing it could have been tracking, because they were coming in actually using, it was obvious they were bots. They were using Microsoft Internet Explorer 9 and Windows NT or Windows Vista or Windows 7. And it's like, who uses Windows Vista anymore? Yeah, come on. So they were obviously on an old machine that they were just, they did a program. Well, I got concerned, and I would see that my Google referral traffic would drop when these guys would come and do their little thing. So I eventually switched out of analytics and switched to server side of PWIC. It's called Matomo, but they provide the server. And so, and it has all the same analytics, and it's $9 a month, so no biggie.
And so by doing that, does that remove the effectiveness of the bounce SEO?
I'm not sure. I am assuming that Google, they have said they don't, but I never believe anything Google says they don't do. They say they don't use analytics, but I noticed that it was affecting my traffic. My guess is they may use analytics as a confirming signal, maybe not a ranking signal, but a confirming signal, which would be, okay, we think we should rank it here. What does analytics show?
Sure. Interesting.
That's my guess. And that's just a guess, and I could be wearing a tinfoil hat,
Right. There's so many factors in the correlation, and it's who knows. So what was the name of the analytics tool?
It's PWIC. PWIC's been around forever, but you used to have to put it on your own server in order to get it to run. It is called Matomo, Matomo.
I typically stick to analytics for simplicity. And then I've actually never, even as data driven as I am, I've never gotten into tracking the clicks and the activity and stuff on the site as much. But a few months ago, I try and keep up with folks, even if I don't do a proper update. But you were telling me about some of the Pinterest experiments that you were doing. And because you had things set up like you mentioned, with a tag manager, you were able to get some decent data from the Pinterest stuff that you're working on. So tell me about what you did and some of the findings that you have so far.
What I did, I already had the article. So people who are doing this, if they're just starting out, they probably won't see the increase as quickly as I had it. I redid all my featured images on the website to a 600 by 900 pixel featured image. Now that's not, when they come to my site, they don't get blasted with this huge featured image before they can see anything. In fact, I don't even have a featured image at the top. It's just the website header and then the title. But then in the content, I have a narrowed down or a smaller version of that featured image in the content near the top. I did that for all the articles. I had an old Pinterest account that I fired back up, and I did keyword-rich description for the account. Then I did 22 boards for each product line, and those were keyword rich both in the title and the description. And then each pin, basically I used my Google meta description, where you put in the 150 characters or whatever for Google. I used that as my pin description and then did relevant hashtags with it. And so I started out, I was getting just a trickle of traffic without doing anything, between 1 and 5 visitors per week. And I grew that in 3 months to 100 visitors per day. And that happened at the time when Google started all their updates in August, Medic and whatever. Sometimes I would get dinged, sometimes I wouldn't get dinged, but it irritates me when Google does updates and I haven't been doing anything wrong and I get dinged. And so I decided I was going to have a second source of traffic.
Right.
And so that's what I did. Now, it is not the same as Facebook or Twitter or those social media. It is actually a visual search engine. People go to Pinterest to find out how to do things and to learn about what they need for projects they have and everything else. And it's not just women. Believe it or not, I have 45% men and 55% women that look at my profile, which is I got a higher percentage of men than women compared to the site, but there's enough men on there to make it worth your while. And it's not all recipes and, Etsy crafts. Some of my pins are getting repinned like crazy because they're beautiful images of the product. So I did that, and then there's a free version of it and then a paid version of it, but a program called Tailwind that is a scheduler for Pinterest and Instagram, but I use it for Pinterest. It makes my workload about an hour per month in pinning and repinning content and doing the strategies. And basically the strategy is have your own boards, have boards that are related. Say, for instance, you're into lawn care and you're pushing lawnmowers. Well, then you can have an outdoor barbecue board because people barbecue on their lawns or barbecue in their yards, and you attract similar type of customers to what your products would be geared towards.
Nice. So think of the audience, think of the market, not just the product.
Exactly. Think of your market. Who would buy your product? Then think of what else would they be interested in. That it doesn't have to be you. Then you can bring in pins from other people who are fitting that niche. They in turn will do the same for you, and pretty soon you've developed a network and you don't have to talk to anybody.
Which is the goal. That's our goal anyway, right?
Yes.
So, okay, cool. It's funny because, we were chatting beforehand and I'm doing some updates with other people. Everyone is like so interested in Pinterest. There's a student of mine, she's in town. So I invited her over. You'll hear it on the podcast feed on the YouTube channel as well. But we were sitting right here earlier and she was telling me about Pinterest. She was telling me about Tailwind and like exactly what you're saying. She spends a little time each month. She batches it. She sets up her whole month and then it's set.
Yeah. I spend about an hour a month.
You said you went from basically, a few visitors a day from Pinterest to about 100 within 3 months. So has it leveled off or does it grow?
It actually has declined a little bit since Christmas is over, but everybody I've talked to that does Pinterest says that's normal, but it is steadily growing. It dropped down to 70, but it's still 70 to 90 and it's still growing.
Okay.
So
cool. Now, did you notice a correlation between the posts that were being pinned or the most activity with the ranking? So was there a correlation between those?
The correlation I've seen is the more engagement your pin gets, the higher it will rank in the Pinterest search traffic. Okay. It really has very little to do. It has to do with the relevancy of your description and title, but it has little to do with what you've done on your website and how great your website is. It is more about the engagement of that pin. So in all honesty, you could have a really crappy website and make this great pin and you'll drive traffic.
From that point of view, it's all about that image, right?
Yes.
So how did you create the images? Did you do it yourself? Did you outsource it?
I outsourced the first batch. Again, didn't like too much what I got. So then I went and found LifeWire's cousin. It was in the same niche. I don't remember the name of it, but it's one of the other about.com. I found their Pinterest board and looked at their pins, and they're all, it's Madison Avenue. Mm-hmm. They've paid somebody to do their pins. So then I went and took their format, not their images, but their format, how their styling and stuff. And I went and duplicated it in Adobe Illustrator and use that. Different colors, different fonts, but basically the same format.
Okay, cool. And that's interesting. So you found something that was working and then you emulated it without copying it, which I'm sure,
yes.
There's hardly anything original. I'm sure they got that from somewhere else, right? So
yeah. And then I've done some experimentation since, and I've actually found a really good review template to use. So I'm now using that.
Okay, like review template, like for what?
For review posts instead of a best list. For a review post, basically a big, huge, beautiful image of the product. Underneath it with a gray gradient, I have just the product name, like the Acme Red Bomb, and then below that I have in my branding colors, I have the name of my website. Oh, and then I have a small, under the title, I have a small italic product review and comparison in smaller font and italic, so they know it's a product review and comparison, price comparison, and that's working great.
Okay, very cool. And just to rewind, so you said you had a decent amount of content when you first started on Pinterest. So how many posts did you have?
I was up to the 540 mark.
Oh, okay. So before
I started.
How did you decide what to create pins for?
I did it for everything.
Everything. So just 100%. And then did you put everything into rotation? And I understand Tailwind has some intelligence so you could repin the good stuff, right?
Yes. I pinned directly to my boards first. So I'd do about 10 a day, 10 to 20 a day. I might do 10 in the morning, 10 at night, until I got all my pins on there. Then I started rotating them through Tailwind and pinning them to relevant boards and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But I pin directly first.
Okay.
Don't use Tailwind to start the pin. Use it to pin from Pinterest.
Okay. And at this point, we're getting to area, which I don't even know what you're talking about, but I understand. So you create
your eyes are glassing over.
So you create your own. I could care less about Pinterest, but I think I'm going to get into it since I've heard about it so much. And I'm like, you know what? There's probably an affiliate program for Tailwind, right? So I'll check it out. You create your own boards. You created 22 of them. You populated each of those boards with all of your 530 posts. And then after that, you started pinning other stuff into your boards also?
Not into my own personal boards that have my products. I created relevant boards, pinned other products plus my products into those boards.
Okay.
Other people's pins plus mine.
Gotcha. So the 22, we'll struggle through this together. So the 22 boards you filled with your own stuff, and then you created other boards.
Yes.
In which you pinned other people's stuff as well as yours.
Yeah. For instance, if you had,
let's use fruits. Let's use fruits like pears and apples and bananas.
Okay. So let's say you have pears, apples, and bananas boards. Then you could have a tree horticulture board. You could pin your articles from pears, apples, and bananas. I don't know if bananas come. Yeah, bananas come from trees. Yeah. And also, maples and that other people are doing, plus tree care and pesticide or pruning or whatever you do into that board. You could then have, say, a fruit recipes board where, make fruit salad and how to make apple pie and different things. And you can do your apple and your fruit into that one as well. Honestly, if you're thinking about your target audience and what they're going to use stuff for and what they're going to do around the stuff, you can have an endless amount of boards. Okay.
And do you keep creating new boards, or are you you're happy with where it's at right now?
I'm happy where it's at right now. When I started doing Tailwind more, I found I was lacking in some categories, and I can just tell you these categories because they have nothing to do with, they have to do with my audience, but not with my site. There's a lot of clothing websites that use Pinterest. So I did a clothing deals. I'm never going to review a piece of clothing, but I'll do clothing deals. I have electronics. That's a broad. And I have some of my stuff in that and a lot of other people's stuff. I have jewelry and home crafts and food tips. These are all things that would be around some of my products.
So like when you start pinning other people's stuff, do they see that you pinned it and then they'll check out your stuff potentially?
At times. And times they'll follow you. And the good thing about Pinterest, it doesn't matter if you have 1 follower or 100,000 followers. Honestly, Pinterest doesn't use that anymore in their search rankings, which is what you want, is their search rankings.
Okay. Cool. Because I remember there was a stretch where I recall, it was a very big deal to have so many followers, but I guess they've changed up their algorithm a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's based on the relevancy of the pin and people's reaction to it.
Okay. Interesting. Very good. And like I said, I'll have to get into it now that I've heard Tailwind like multiple times already in the last couple of days.
The nice thing about Pinterest is actually it converts better than Google traffic. It is not a lot better, but it's a couple percentage points higher than Google traffic.
Okay. And this is tying it all back together. Thanks, Duke. So basically you were keeping good track with the Google Tag Manager. So you saw that at least more people were clicking over to Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't track it past that. I look at it as I've done my job if I've gotten somebody to click to Amazon.
But what we can take away, right? So let's say someone hasn't started a site yet. They start a site, they get maybe 30 pieces of content on there pretty quickly. Maybe they need to get more on there, but they get some content published. They can start pinning stuff. They can start that activity and potentially get traffic, long before they're going to get much traffic from Google.
Exactly. In my head, that was one of the things I was trying to figure out is if I was going, because I got some guys that want me to teach this stuff to them. I'm not pastoring a church right now, but old members of my last church. And they want me to teach this stuff. How do I get them to get some traffic even sooner than the 6-month mark or Ricky and Jim's 8-month mark or whatever? How do you get it? And Pinterest is the way you can get quicker traffic.
Yep. And the Christy, like I was talking about earlier, who lives in town, her site, she started it in like mid-October. She's getting, some traffic from Google, but she's been able to really take advantage of like Pinterest traffic, primarily through just smart outreach and being active on Pinterest. So she has like quite a bit more traffic than most people would have in, 3 months time because she's like taking advantage of Pinterest. Like,
right.
It's not going viral, but it's like big for a brand new site because again, outreach, smart connections, and like being active and trying. So interesting. Okay. So one final thing. So you were at very little traffic. You started with Pinterest. You got up to about 100 visitors from Pinterest per day. Like what was the buildup like? Like how long did it take for it to start working?
It took about a month to start seeing a difference. And it was, 25 or so. And it kind of jumped. It was 25 or so. Then, next week it was 35. And then the next week it was 50. And kind of that,
hockey stick.
Oh, hockey stick. Yes.
Gotcha.
Type thing.
Yeah. And I have heard a couple people mention there seems to be like a sandbox period for Pinterest where they, you have to earn your credibility before they start, pushing your stuff a little bit more. So maybe that month or so.
Could have been.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. So from a link building standpoint, can you tell us a little bit about what you've done there?
On the big site, I used a couple services to acquire some guest posts. I did 20 guest posts to the large site. I also used another guy I know who got me 10 newspaper, local newspaper links as well. And other than that, I basically did. Pinterest is the only social network I ever see in Google Analytics. Okay. Or not analytics, Google Search Console. At least a portion of your Pinterest links in Search Console. So that's all I did. And the little site, I didn't do a darn thing. In fact, I didn't really do much to it at all for almost the entire year. I'm doing stuff to it now, but I didn't do stuff to it almost the entire year. Just let it cruise along because I was bound and determined I was going to make that large site pay. I wasn't going to lose my money.
Right. Interesting. So for the smaller site, basically no link building at all, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
And then is that keyword golden ratio based, or is it something else?
Probably 30% keyword golden ratio based. The rest was just keyword research. I started off using Keyword Finder. I don't use it anymore. Keyword Finder works fine for informational articles. I think it fails some with buyers' keywords. Its keyword competition tool metrics doesn't work as well.
Okay, cool.
So that's what I did. Some of them were pillar posts. I got a couple really huge pillar posts and some best lists, and not a lot of product reviews, but that's changing. So
it sounds like since you did a lot of link building for the larger site, and then you haven't been doing as much, and you're making more money on the smaller site. So it sounds like maybe you're not that interested in doing link building. Is that accurate?
I've never been interested in it. And at this point, I'm just not seeing the return on it. There was a time when I used to be able to build links and rank. Mm-hmm. You would see movement. I haven't seen any movement. And so I'm looking at it from a business standpoint, and I can spend $1,000 link building, or I can spend $1,000 on content. Well, $1,000 of content is going to make me more money than the $1,000 of link building. That's just the way I've seen it at this point. If somebody can show me different, I'd love it, but I can't figure it out.
Right. Well, then the other thing is basically whatever you want someone to show you, there's someone who's selling you something who could show you something that'll make you want to buy whatever they're selling. So I totally understand what you're saying. And I think, for a lot of people, the link building portion, like you said, you've never been interested in link building. That's not as fun. If you find it fun, like you're in a rare group, a lot of my friends, they do enjoy the link building part of it and just the outreach part of it and blah, blah, blah. My observations anecdotally over the last, year, 18 months or something is like the links take a while to kick in, and it's like you have to be consistently getting links over 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and then like the links don't kick in all the way, maybe for a year. So it's like you do all this stuff and it's hard to tell, probably because, people like you and I in the past, we built a lot of links and we would see things happen. We would adjust the anchor text. We would add more links, and you could just see what worked, and then you could abuse the system where with a long enough timeline, it takes the ROI out of it so that you're left to do something, hopefully that makes the internet a better place versus building links that are garbage. So yeah, I think there's a lot of randomness into it, and links still help, of course, but it's hard to tell what links are helping. And then there's other factors too, right? I think maybe, right? Don't necessarily do this, Duke, but I'm thinking the larger site, maybe it was so competitive that the links that you got were maybe just a drop in a sea of many other sites that had tons of links, where your smaller niche, you're ranking without links. What if you had a couple links to a couple pages that needed it? I don't know. That could be interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything that interesting going on that you want to that I didn't ask about? That
not really, other than I'm basically doing this full time now. We were already set up fairly well. We done Dave Ramsey's course. My wife's really good with saving money and not going in debt and all that stuff. So we're debt free. So we're able to do this full time now. So it was 18 months to get to the point. Other than that, I don't know. I think we're doing good. It's fun to be in it and doing it. I've been blogging since 2011, and I have worked at numerous different ways of trying to monetize my efforts on the internet until I came across you and Human Proof Designs and Authority Hacker. I had not cracked the code yet of how to do it. My biggest website, which is my blog, it's probably at 50,000 visitors a month, but it only makes $450 a month on advertising.
Right.
So the return on investment with the niche sites, it's been good for me. It's been a life changer for me.
Nice. Very good. Well, that's cool. That's good to hear overall. And the podcast, which we're going to put this both on, if you're watching this, it's on the podcast too. And then for people that are listening to the podcast, we're putting it on the YouTube channel. So there's some cross-pollination, but we have the luxury of covering and talking about whatever we want. So the financial independence could be cool for us to talk about sometime in the future, Duke. Yeah. So if people are interested, please let us know. My wife is really good with numbers too. So hopefully we'll be in the position you're in sometime soon. So just to close it up, for people that let's aim at people that maybe haven't started a site yet and they're thinking about it. So what advice would you give the budding entrepreneur interested in affiliate marketing?
The first thing I would do is get products out of your head. Don't go, I like fishing poles. Instead go, I really love to fish. How can I make a website that is great about fishing? Or golfing, canoeing, whatever it is you're into, or something you'd be interested in. A product focus just becomes much more difficult to compete and to monetize or get a good return on investment. Secondly, quit worrying about getting it all right. Instead, just do it. I learned huge valuable lessons in my second site, the large site, that I'm now applying to the first site that's going to take it to the next level. Start doing it. You learn by doing. You can't learn by watching another video. You got to start putting it to practice. And that's what I love about Jim and Ricky. I disagree with a lot of what they say, to be very honest, but I love that they're encouragers that encourage people to get in there and do it. And that's why they're successful. So,
yep. Well said. So to quickly summarize, take action. You're going to make mistakes. You could fix it later. And that's the core piece, right? As long as you're doing something, moving a little bit forward, you're going to figure it out.
Yeah. My first blog in 2011 was a blogger blog, and it was ugly.
It's a mess. Yeah. I remember those. Yeah, I think I had one of those too. That's funny. All right. Yeah. Well, Duke, thanks again. It's been a pleasure catching up. And we'll maybe get something else out on the calendar sometime soon. So have a great day, and really appreciate it.
Okay. Take care.